Hi there, welcome to my video. Today we'll be having a look at bHaptics' new studio and how to use this in order to create and customize Audio-to-Haptics profiles. We'll be going through and breaking down the main functions and just how to tune and hone in your very own profile to suit your purposes. bHaptics Studio offers you ways and functions in which you can select specific bands of frequencies and set thresholds, activation areas for you to really tune your preference in how you feel the sound and music. What this also means, however, is that you can essentially extend your sensory interaction and ability past what you would normally only auditorily hear. So if you're really into experiencing music, or if you're a DJ even, you can set the studio and player to accentuate certain frequencies so that you don't have to blast it out of your speakers anymore. This surround sound will be most useful in things like watching surround sound movies, and definitely for things like games where you can detect where the action and sound is coming from by feeling it. For music, there are two existing pre-made profiles. There's pop and then there's bass. Bass is of course great for those who love to feel those hard-hitting drops in their music. The bHaptics player is nicely and seamlessly integrated with the browser-based Studio Profile Designer. You can just hit this edit button right here and be brought straight to bHaptics Studio. So from here you can choose to edit the current theme or profile, or choose to create an entirely new one. Don't worry, feel free to have a play and experiment with the settings and get a feel for it all. You won't mess anything up, the core default profiles will still be there. Plus, if you don't like what you've created, you can always just delete it and start again. Not to mention you have this nifty little undo button here. You have this default list of all the base and core profiles that have been pre-made by the bHaptics team. Even if you have one of the core default profiles currently selected, the moment that you make any changes to it, Studio will automatically create a whole new profile for you, and thus preserving the core ones. It's all very nicely laid out. You can see the range of frequencies very clearly, starting on the left from the bassy lows to the highs on the right. And you can see which ones are currently active or inactive, which basically means which band of frequencies are going to be actively converted into haptics. So I find that the easiest way to create a profile from music is to simply edit one of the existing default profiles, and to be actively playing the kind of music that I want to profile. Once you start playing the music, you can see the visualizations of the frequencies. And here is where the customization begins. Firstly, you're going to want to select the specific band of frequency that you want to edit. So if you want to start customizing what the low bassy frequencies do first, then you start on the left lower end of the spectrum. Now, these two brackets here represent the lower and upper thresholds of this particular band of frequencies. And what this means is that wherever you set the lower bracket threshold is where the haptics will start or activate. And similarly, where you set the higher bracket is where the haptics will deactivate. In other words, the haptics will only become active between the lower and higher thresholds. Essentially, you can set the lower and higher thresholds in the exact same way for each band of frequencies. You can also choose to edit the thresholds by typing in the numbers manually. However, personally, I much prefer to do it visually. If you want to change all of either the low or high thresholds at the same time, then these are the buttons here at the top that will do that for you. Now, when it comes to this button labeled Adaptive Threshold, my understanding of this is basically it automatically adapts the threshold levels and detects the average level of the frequencies that's occurring. And it does this so that you can really define the peaks that are supposed to be converted into haptics. In other words, it takes the whole jumble of sounds that are currently going on and it tries to find the most prominent ones that stand out. And then it converts those into haptics so that it's a much more pleasant and punchy experience. So moving on, if we take the pop music profile as an example, it would seem to generally be designed to target the frequencies that are associated with the bass, the instrumentals, and the vocals. And if we also look specifically at the bass profile, you can see that it's really set to target and isolate just the lower bassy frequencies. So the different profiles and the different customizations will be very dependent on your preference and your style of music, of course. And just have fun playing around and experimenting with it until you find what you feel you really like. So now that you've chosen and set all your different frequencies that you want to convert into haptics, you can now choose what haptics they are actually converted into. We do this at the very bottom of the page that's called feedback point setting. So let's just say, for example, when we're referring to the really bassy frequencies, we want to feel them right here, right there in the middle of the chest. You simply select the frequency first and then select the points of feedback that you want. And in this case, bang, right here in the center of the chest. This will give that sort of bass pumping feeling right at your core. But perhaps this is something that you might not particularly want. Perhaps your preference is to feel the bass directly and only in your arms. That is simple enough, and it's exactly the same procedure. You just choose the points to be activated that are on the arms. You can even choose to edit the haptics so that you feel things asymmetrically. So if we look here, by default we can see that left to right mirroring is turned on. But if you then turn this off, you can define which side you would prefer to feel these frequencies on specifically. So like the bass on the left and the vocals on the right side, just for an example. There really are just so many ways that you can customize your haptic experience. But more than this, there are also very practical applications that you can use this studio for. So for example, as mentioned previously, if you're using the haptics for gaming and you're also in voice chat talking to your friends, you can use Studio to cut out your friends' voices from the haptics so they're not getting converted into haptics along with all the other sounds.
Hi there, testing, 1, 2, 3.
To do this, you go through a very similar process. You take your friend's voice and simply isolate your friend's voice by watching the frequencies through the visualizer, and then just either disable it or adjust the lower and higher thresholds. It can be a bit of a balancing act to get just right and get that exact profile that you want, but the fact that it's so customizable means that you can actually get the exact profile that you want. Once you've finalized your profile, feel free to name it, and it will automatically show up in the bHaptics player's drop-down list. Okay, that pretty much covers everything that you need to know in order to use bHaptics Studio effectively. Remember to stay tuned for driver updates regarding surround sound. Thanks for watching and enjoy the haptics.